started because there's quite a few people out there in webinar land. Thank you. This is Sula, the PCRN Program Manager. Thanks for waiting. Apologise for the delay. Just got a few ladies over here. So almost feels like family. Most of you do know me. I'm Sula, the Program Manager for PCRN. There's a couple of new faces. And this is our first forum for 2017, but actually our 8th. So I can't believe we've actually had 8 of these. We're getting old now. First, I'd just like to thank Alfie, because she's a superstar. I just stand here and hopefully I try and look good, but she does all the work behind the scenes, and she's been an absolute star in getting this whole forum organised and liaising with Sasha and setting it all up. So thank you, Alfie. I really appreciate your help. I've got some oops. Okay, it's not breaking. I might need your help, Alfie. Okay, IT. So just some exciting news. Wrong one, that's why. We've appointed our scientific advisory committee for the PCRN, and without going into too much detail, all their names and their affiliations are on our website. But it's really exciting that we had so many applications from a very diverse group of people with a fantastic diverse skill set and from different organisations and different research abilities. So we look forward to working with them in the future. Also, check our website. Our application's now open for the PCRN small project grants. This is a very busy slide, but all the details about the initiative are on the website, so have a look out for that. Plus our travel grants will also be open soon. So that's to we support travel to national and international conferences. And for those of you that are joining us during webinar, we will be recording our forum today, just the audio and slides only, no video sites, but we'll attempt to address all your questions at the end of the forum. We can't do it during the talk, unfortunately, because of the technology, but just wait at the end and we'll try and address all your questions at the end. So today's forum will be quite interesting. Sasha will give us a talk of 20 minutes, followed by question and answers, and then she'll be doing a 30-minute type of workshop, pitching your idea and telling you how to write. So keep your questions until the end, and just a reminder, following the forum we have networking drinks and nibbles across the hall. Sorry for you there in webinar land, we'll drink double for you. I'd just like to introduce our speaker, Sasha Petrova, and thank you, Sasha, again for agreeing to do this. I think you said yes about 6 months ago, and thank you, stuck to your gun. So Sasha's the assistant editor for the health medicine unit or group at the section, I should say, yeah, at the Conversation, and you joined there in 2015. Is that right? 2015. Right, yes. After working at the Centralian Advocate in Alice Springs as a health and education reporter. Prior to that, you completed a Masters in Journalism, International Relations, and wrote regular freelance pieces for various Australian publications. So tonight, Sasha will take you through the presentation, how to present research to a lay audience. So let's welcome Sasha. Thank you.
Okay, so obviously I'm Sasha. And I'm one of the health and medicine editors at The Conversation. So I'll be running you through how to present research to a lay audience. The presentation will be about 20 minutes and then Q&A for 10 minutes and then a workshop, just workshopping some of the concepts that I'll talk about. So firstly, I just want to tell you a bit about The Conversation, which I think if you understand what we do and how we do it, it'll sort of shape your understanding of how to pitch your research to any media outlets, really, because we get republished by a lot of different media. They're looking for the same things that we're looking for. So how many of you read The Conversation? Oh, wow, a lot of people. Thank you. And has anyone written for us before? Oh, what was your name?
Matt.
Matt. Have you written for the health section?
Yeah.
Okay.
Many years.
Many years. Okay, great. All right, so what is The Conversation? This is our homepage. So The Conversation was created essentially for the reason that we're here today, which is to help, we're a bridge between the academic community and the public. So the guy who created the conversation, or had the idea for it, Andrew Jaspan, he was editor of The Age, and he had this brilliant concept that there's so much knowledge in academia, and that's confined to academic journals and behind university walls, and people really, really want to know about it, especially when it comes to health. People are really fascinated by their bodies and how they work, and especially just anything to do with themselves. So they want to know, and we're here to pretty much translate academic jargon into reader-friendly public language. So what we are is an online source of analysis and news written by academics for a lay audience. And like I said, our aim is to help the public better understand current affairs and complex issues. We provide the facts without the overdressing, and the one area where we're really unique when it comes to other media is that we're credible. There's a lot of fear at the moment that everything is fake news, and of course a lot of mainstream media outlets are not fake news, but we can pretty much offer legitimacy in the sense that our writers are experts. They're not just journalists who will just look over an issue, learn about it, and then 10 minutes before they write the story, and then there's quite a few misconceptions when they do actually put it to paper, especially when it's health and it's really complex issues. So here the experts write the stories. They fill out a disclosure statement which tells the audience whether they're affiliated with a political party or a group that might influence what they have to say. So how do we work? Academics pitch story ideas to us. We commission the stories. Sometimes we come up with ideas ourselves. And then we work with academics to refine, edit, polish, and make each story work in the news cycle. So we, like I said, we shape it and we just kind of interpret it into reader-friendly language. And our stories are published under a Creative Commons license, which means that anyone can republish us as long as they follow certain guidelines. And I'll just tell you about that in a minute. So firstly, what will we do for you if you write for us? We have an established audience, which I will also tell you about in a minute, established social media reach. We are republished by media across the world. We're an entree into other media. Basically, a lot of our authors will get interview requests by the ABC or The Age or, TV and things like that. We will improve, well, we won't improve your writing skills, but the process, the editing process and the questions that we ask and the prompts that we give you will improve the way that you present your research, obviously not in the academic arena, but in the public arena. You can also be assured that your message won't be misinterpreted. Like I said earlier, as I said earlier, okay. So mainstream media will interview experts, and there are times when they will quote someone and they'll put the quotes in a slightly different context. It'll create a slightly different slant. An academic might say we're 10 years away from finding something that might lead to a cure, and they will say we're really close to finding a cure, and that's a bit different to what you guys were saying. So one thing that we provide is that your words will not be published until you've hit the approval button. So we will send you the article that you've written back. You'll look over it, and once you push approve, we can publish. We actually aren't allowed to publish until that's approved. So the system sort of blocks that. And obviously your institution will get some publicity. So as I was saying about our audience, we get 3.3 unique reads a month, and that is just from the site alone. When we're republished by all of these great publications here, it adds up to about 35 million reads a month. Some of the main publications that the health and medical section gets published by are, Australian Doctor, IFL Science. If you guys know, I fucking love science. It stands for. Once they republish anything, it just shoots up in numbers. People love that science. As I said before, professional opportunities. So 55% of our authors get contacted by the media. 80% by radio, 49 print media, 33 website, and 23 television. We launched in March 2011. We've got a site in the UK now, fully funded by universities in the UK. So I'm not sure if you know, but we are funded essentially by universities in Australia. We established a site in US, Africa, and France, and there might be more coming soon. So our readers, the proportion is mainly non-academic. So there is a bit of a misconception that because we publish academics, most of the people who read our site are also academics. You know, many are, but it's in, you know, the largest proportion is non-academic, which just shows actually really that the public really wants to hear from academics. So when should you pitch a story to us? We've got a pitch function on our page which takes you through the kind of things that we look for, and I'll show you where to find that later. But once you understand, like I said before, what we are looking for, it's pretty much the same thing everybody else is looking for. That's why they republish our stories. And especially when it comes to academia, there's very certain things that the media wants from experts. And what they would like is timely evidence-based analysis of issues making the news, such as new research or peer-reviewed fact checks, timeless plain English explainers of complex issues, and in-depth series of specials.
What do they mean?
I will just take you through that now. So timely evidence-based analysis of issues making the news, such as new research. So this is just plain news stories, but written by you guys. So this is one that we ran on doctors providing too many dying patients with needless treatment. This was a story published, I don't know if you guys know about it. It was research last year, and it showed a third of patients at the end of life are getting you know, chemotherapy or surgery or interventions that are not going to really do much for them. Plain English explainers of complex issues. So an explainer is an editorial product we developed, but essentially all our articles are explainers, because what we do is we explain the facts and the issues behind the news. So in this case, you know, there was a scurvy outbreak, or at least a few people got scurvy in New South Wales. Yeah, sorry, it wasn't an outbreak, but it was presented as one. And, you know, what we try and do, we try and sort of clarify the real sort of truth of the matter. So obviously everyone said it was an outbreak. We sort of tried to tone it down a bit and say, is it actually making a comeback? And the piece explained that, you know, it's not, and you have to eat like less than one fruit a week before you get scurvy. So these are kind of things that these are concepts or diseases that that general people might have heard about, but they don't actually know what they mean. People sort of know scurvy is associated with sailors, like years ago, but they don't really know anything else about it. So this gave them everything they needed to know. So in-depth series and specials. This is when we explore one area through various angles. So here's a series we did. This was a really popular one, coping with mortality. So this one looked at death in different ways. So one of them looked at the fact that a lot of anxieties we have, like say fear of spiders or fear of just people or crowds, is actually just standing in for our larger fear of death. Then there's another article to help children cope with death or understand death. One about how to cope with your actual fear of death, and you know, one about palliative care and what you can expect. So that one did really well, especially the how to cope with death one, because I think everyone has that fear and wants to know. And then one on empathy also did quite well. So that one looked at, you know, what is empathy, what do the brain scans of people, you know, who lack empathy sort of show us. Just art and culture, cultivate empathy, empathy in relationships, and also empathy in the medical profession. This is another example of the kind of thing we look for. So you might have remembered this article. This one, it was a study team at the University of Flinders University, and they pretty much said that a cure for dementia was 5 years away. We looked at that quite critically and thought, that can't be right. So we asked a professor of psychiatry at Florey Institute for Neuroscience to take us through that, to kind of take a step back, and he basically explained, that it was an animal study, how long it takes to actually get from animal studies to human studies. He talked about how for every 10,000 compounds that enter the drug pipeline, only one actually succeeds and makes it to the clinical stage. So, you can't really get too excited about these kinds of things. And what we try and do is make sure that people who might get overly hopeful with these kind of hyperbolic, excited headlines can actually get the real truth of the matter. And he started it quite well. He sort of made it a little bit funny. He said that his mother-in-law called him and, because he's working in Alzheimer's research, she had said to him, obviously there's a cure coming, so maybe you should stop working on Alzheimer's and focus on something else. And he's made the point that he's going to continue doing that. So how do you pitch to us, or how do you write a story? So the pitch is very similar to the actual story itself that you will write. If you can grab us with your pitch, and if we're interested enough in what you would like to write for us, that's the same way that you will target the audience once you actually do write. So the main points in terms of communicating your research is, the first thing you should think of is, why should anyone care about what you have to say? What will it do for them? What's the significance of anything that you found? Then you have to say it in the most straightforward way possible, and I will tell you about that in a minute. And the other thing is, avoid or explain any kind of jargon. There's a lot of jargon in academia that we try and translate into normal words. So, tips for writing. So the first thing, like I said, use plain conversational English. So when I talk to an academic on the phone and I ask them what their research is about, they will give me a really good account of what they found and what the significance is and what it's going to do. And then when they actually put it into writing, I don't understand anything that they've said. So what we try and do is rewrite it so that it sounds like you are talking to a friend about your research, and a friend who's not working in the same area of expertise as you. So obviously you go from passive voice to active voice. Active voice is really important. I don't know if this sounds condescending or anything, but in active voice the subject does action, and the action is being done by the subject in passive voice. So Anna hits the ball, it's active. The ball is hit by Anna, it's passive. But that sounds simple enough, but then things like patients' experiences in palliative care were explored in a study that is very passive. We will flip that around and say a 1994 study explored patients' experiences in palliative care. Avoiding jargon. Sometimes you have to use the word because it obviously means something. So things like immunosuppressants, you want to talk about them, but instead of saying immunosuppressants, you'd want to change that to medications that suppress the immune system, blah, blah. So we will always kind of look at the definition and almost put the entire definition in place of the word itself. Also, psychosocial is something that's used very often. We break it up into psychological and social. So here's another example of saying it straight. The question surrounding the continued use of industrial sites given their vast pollution production still remains. You could say industrial sites cause vast amounts of environmental pollution, so why do we still use them? We are actually giving you the question instead of talking about how there is a question there somewhere. And this is kind of the crux of it, is the lead. In journalism 101, this is what they teach you, is the lead of the story is the main part of the story. It's kind of the first two sentences that will tell the reader everything they need to know about the story that they're about to read. So research shows we've got the attention span of a goldfish, so people really take about 8 seconds reading an article, and if they don't like what they see in those 8 seconds, they're not going to continue. So you really have 8 seconds to tell them, the most important part about your research. Generally, the lead isn't more than 24 words long, and that kind of varies, but that's the rule. and you have to be simple, jargon-free, and easily digestible. The inverted pyramid is a really kind of crucial teaching thing in journalism. So that basically says that the end is always going to be the beginning. So everything you know about story writing, where you set up the plot and the background, and you introduce characters, and you build up suspense and all of that stuff, and then only at the end do you really get to the point. That is all upside down in journalism. The very point is where you start with, and then you can talk about background and things afterwards. But basically, because of the goldfish thing, people want to know the point immediately. They don't really care about, the methodology and the amount of people that were recruited for the study and things like that. So whenever we look at an academic paper and we are thinking about a news story from that paper, the first thing we do is look at the conclusion, and that conclusion is what we put in the first line. Sorry? Well, no, I'm about to show you that it's not cut and paste, actually. So I just quickly want to say, so the first part of the story is information that must be you must have for your communication to be successful, and then there's additional information, and then the end is sort of like, it'll be nice if someone had it. So if they don't actually get to the end of the article, they've still got the whole point that you wanted to put across. So here's an academic paper. This study found that vasopressin was, what did it find? That low levels of vasopressin in the blood of children with autism corresponded with a lower theory of mind score. So that was kind of what was in the conclusion. And if you were to put that as the first line of a story, that's still not quite right. People are not really going to get that. So what you need to then remember is, once you have that main conclusion and the main point in the conclusion, is you go back to those 3 points, which is, why should people care about that? Say it as straight as possible and avoid jargon. So in this case, the finding that these low levels of vasopressin correspond with a lower theory of mind score pretty much means that if we increase the levels of vasopressin in autistic children, they might, it might up their theory of mind score. That's kind of why we should care about that. That's the practical implication of it. The second thing is say it straight, which means things like vasopressin and theory of mind, which are jargon, have to be explained. And I will show you how that kind of ended up. So the first part there is increasing autistic children's levels of vasopressin, and then we explain it, a hormone that regulates social behavior, could help treat the social deficits common to autism. So we don't even mention theory of mind there, because that's going to be too difficult. You're going to have to then get into what that is, and there's not much point. What we can just broadly say is that it's a social deficit, and later on it does talk about theory of mind. And then there's a little bit of background as to what vasopressin is, and oxytocin, and where the study was published and things like that. So this is another example. This study found that persistent depression shrinks the hippocampus. So brain damage is caused by persistent depression rather than being a predisposing factor for it. The reason that we sort of should care, or the significance of it, is given to you there, which is that researchers have finally concluded this after decades of, what we're saying is this was a contentious issue for a long time, now it's been resolved. That's the point of it. We don't talk about the hippocampus in the first sentence, we just say brain damage. Yeah. And then the hippocampus is explained later, so that's kind of just elaborates, that second part of the story elaborates on the first part.
The title's been quite snappy as well, so that draws you in.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the headlines you guys don't have to worry about, because that's what we come up with. But we do get into trouble with them because, the whole association causation thing, sometimes we'll say, like, having low levels of low educational attainment will lead to poorer heart health. And this was a study that found that, people who do have low levels of educational attainment tend to also have poorer heart health, but it doesn't mean that obviously that it leads to that. It just means that there's an association, and I remember we did a headline that said that it causes it, and we got into some trouble for that.
Can I ask,
Yes.
that first sentence is quite a clumsy sentence. I mean, with respect, sorry. And you would normally put it around the other way, and I'm wondering, so you would normally you would say, wouldn't you, well, right, but you know, after decades of unconfirmed hypothesizing, researchers have finally concluded that, but you've obviously deliberately done it that way.
Yeah.
You've got the thing first. So even at
Brain damage.
being a bit sort of,
Yeah, brain damage being caused by depression is the most interesting part of that. And then the fact that it was a contentious issue is the second part of that is of interest. Yeah.
so
I
you
can
really evaluate it to that. I mean, so you sacrifice the.
Yes. Yeah. So it might sound clumsy grammatically, but in terms of the interest in capturing attention, yes, we go with the first, most interesting part first. Good question, though. And then this is the study that I was talking about doctors providing futile treatments at the end of life. So this one, obviously, we don't need to say why it's significant. It's interesting in itself. Although, no, we do say that. We say that it only worsens the quality of their last days. We also say we don't, the term that they used for that is non-beneficial treatments. That's kind of a bit jargony, so that's something we left out at the beginning, and we just said needless treatments. And that's pretty much it. So this is the pitch function that we have on our website. If you go to the home page and you scroll a bit down, on the right-hand side there's a thing saying pitch an idea, and you click on it and you can pitch. And yeah, so I think now we can, did you bring any research with you?
Does anybody have any questions before?
Oh yes, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
you might.
Yes.
I just noticed that the paragraphs are essentially 1 or 2 sentences maximum, so they're really short.
Yeah.
Sharp.
Yes.
Could you repeat the question for the webinar?
I can. The paragraphs are really short sentences, so they're essentially just 1 or 2 sentences long, and that is a standard formatting thing when it comes to news stories. When it comes to analysis pieces, which are slightly different, the paragraphs are usually a bit longer, but generally we still try and break it up as much as possible.
What is republishing actually?
Okay, what does republishing mean? So it means that if the Guardian, one of the Guardian editors sees one of our stories that they would like on their page, there's a way that they do it that I'm not familiar with because I don't know technical stuff, but they can go to our page and they can push a button and then it automatically republishes on their site so that it looks like their story.
It's the same text.
It's exactly the same text, so they can't really change the headlines or the pictures or anything. So it's exactly the same. It says who the author is, and then down the bottom it says this was originally published in the conversation.
And the author is the scientist?
Yes, the author is always the scientist.
And believe that process can just happen, that's out, once you've published it on a conversation, then that republishing can happen out of your control?
Yes,
Yeah.
well it does happen out of your control.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Translated into other languages, or are they English?
Yeah, do articles get translated into other languages? They do. We've got a French site and they actually do translate a lot of our pieces into French. And we've had some articles appear in Spanish newspapers. Russia recently translated something. So yes, it does happen. Yes?
Is there any difficulty with the relationship between this and the journal that was originally published? So you talked about the copyright for whatever, it's okay for the conversation thereon.
Yeah.
But, you know, with respect to where
Yep. Is there any difficulty with the journal that where the research was originally published? So it works in the same way that it does with any other media. Other media report on research that has been published in journals as well. And there's an embargo that usually is set, and you can't publish until that embargo lifts. So we follow the same rule in that. Yeah.
So what's your perfect length of a whole article?
The 8 seconds of attention I was talking about, what is the perfect length for the whole article? 800 words is what our articles are usually, and that's actually a bit longer than most articles in most newspapers, and that's because we consider ourselves an analysis publishing site. We don't publish just news, we kind of analyse the news. So instead of just saying what the research found, we then also go into what it means and, you know, how it was conducted and a whole bunch of other things that other media don't really do. Yeah.
So on that,
Yes.
I saw that some of those you link back to, say, the article, like the publications, reference to, like the manuscript.
Yes.
Do you link to other references?
Yes. So
Do you need permission? How does that work?
do we link to other references? Well, no, we don't need permission because they're all publicly available. Well, not the abstracts are. Yeah, I mean they're publicly out there, so you can find it yourself, which means that it's yes. Yep. Yeah. Most journals do have the abstract available, so we link to that, and if people want to know more, then they can do it themselves. But the whole point really is about showing credibility and just showing that we know where we got the information from, and that's really important. We try and link to as much as we can and provide as much evidence as we can. So any kind of fact that you make will need to be backed up by research. Yes.
So, if you just outline the process for subsequent media, let's say, it's something published by a conversation with Channel 7 wants to interviews, and you sign up for having your details provided to other outlets, or what has the process been?
Yeah, so this is about the process if someone publishes an article on Conversation and another media outlet wants to interview them, or, yeah. So your details are available, there's a profile that you create on the Conversation as an author, and when your article is published, people can click on your name and that goes to your profile, and you can provide whatever contact details you'd like. So if you don't want to be contacted by other media, you can actually specify that. You can provide your mobile number if you want. If you don't want to, your email is just there. Usually your email is available on your university profile anyway, so that's kind of, people are usually comfortable with that. Yeah.
Can I just go back to the issue around the journal article and this, and you mentioned an embargo.
Yeah.
So can you just explain that a little bit more? Like, is that a set length of time between the original publication and when you would then release this? Or?
Yeah, so I don't know how journals, this is a question about the embargo and what it means. So I don't know how journals do it internally, but the way that we understand it is that we'll get a media release, or we'll get some kind of alert saying, you know, this research is coming out. It will be published in this journal at 9 a.m. on this day, and that the embargo lifts at 9 a.m. on that day. And so we actually get given the specific time, and we can only publish right then or a little bit after.
And it's not a big time lag. It's in the journal's interest to generate public interest in the paper.
Yeah.
Whatever audience anyway.
Yeah, and so they've got communications advisors that will then write media releases about the research, and they're the ones that we get, and we'll read the media releases and see if we're interested in that. Yeah, sorry. Yep.
Sorry, I was going to ask you what your kind of preparation time is in terms of, like, say if you knew there was a big study coming out.
Yeah.
When should someone start talking to you guys and preparing something so that it's sort of synced up?
As soon as possible.
Yeah.
As soon as you know that it's coming out, we need as much time as possible to get it, to go through the process. If we hear that a study's coming out the next day, then we'll try and push the author to write it pretty much in the next 2 hours, so we can, you know, go through the whole process and have it ready and approved for when the embargo lifts. And because we're not a traditional media site, we don't have the journalists writing the news. The academic has to write about their own research, and we have to then edit it to our style, and then go back and ask any other questions. And so the process is a bit longer, so it just takes us a bit longer than traditional media.
All that aspect of me strikes fear into everyone's hearts. So like this, the pressure, the time pressure.
The time pressure, yes.
Would you be interested a month in advance?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and sometimes we do, we actually love that. When somebody says we've got an article coming out in a month, and we edit it and it's just sitting there on our dashboard, and we sort of know that that's our story for that day, it takes a lot of pressure off us as well. So yeah.
Stuff can be published, and I think that may be other people that you know it's in press, but you're not really sure when it's going to become.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes I find out from other people that something's been published.
But then that does not create an embargo. That's
No,
just,
I'm mindful
so
that
that's,
just an acknowledgement that you don't always know, I suppose.
so that's like,
I mean, if
You can't put it out there until it's out there. I mean, every day I always do it, but
I think a lot of journalists, they tell you like it's fairly soon after acceptance that it goes available online, which is probably where the embargo lives or whatever, and then they advise you of the actual print date, which might be months away. But I'd imagine it's the online date that would be.
it depends. Sometimes it's not. Yeah. I think if there's an issue like that, then you can pitch your research to us and just let us know who is going to be publishing it, and we can get in contact with them and see when the embargo lifts and if there is one. Yeah.
is there any questions on the webinar?
I don't know how to open that.
what are you looking for?
Yes.
So we've been talking largely around pitching your own research. Are you interested
Is there any questions?
in the notion of the other
Is there any questions?
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And
That would be a difference of pitch, I guess.
well, no, it's very similar. I forgot to mention this, that the formula works the same regardless of what you're doing. So you tell us why it matters. You say it as simply as possible, and you use, try and use as little data as possible. So
You outline the areas that then you can other people write about.
sorry.
Well, you know how there was all those different articles under facing mortality or whatever.
Yeah.
And visually different people.
Yeah, those were not pitched. So that was an idea that we had, and we kind of feel about that. But yeah, we do different types of articles, obviously, and so I just told you about the news ones, but that's just to show that the main point always goes to the top. So regardless of if you're doing an explainer, then that usually starts with, like that scurvy one actually, that would usually start with, 3 scurvy cases were seen in New South Wales Hospital. So, does this mean that scurvy is coming back to Australia? And then you'll have like a headline saying, something saying what is scurvy, and then you go into that. Yeah, so we'll always start with the most recent fact. Yeah.
So, Sasha, do you have time to run through an example? Like, there's no one's putting the question.
An example of
the workshop. Did you want to?
Well, I was just thinking that if, I don't know if you got an email saying to bring a piece of research, but I was just thinking if you did have something, we could just workshop that first line and see if you guys, If you don't, I can find something and we can all do it together, or we can get in different groups, or it really just depends on how you'd like to do it. Sorry? Well, I mean, we don't have to. Yes?
Sorry, I asked another question while people are looking up there. Confidence. As editors, you sort of, I'm guessing you sort of scout the news well.
Yeah.
And then actually, right away, you actually search out, the best writers and so on. How do you pick and who do you approach?
Yeah. So this is about how do we come up with ideas for articles and who do we approach to write them. So most of our articles, to be honest, don't come from pitches. That is because people don't really understand the media quite as well as, say, we do. We will read the news every morning and we'll see, what's making the news. I'm just trying to think of an example of something.
So, for example, medicinal tablets, that's a massive topic.
Yeah.
I don't know whether people who want to write for you are pitching that idea, or whether you're reading about it on the ABC, for example, so maybe it's reading for us.
Yeah, so that's mostly what happens. So we'll read about it. So for instance, the St. Vincent scandal, the chemotherapy bungle that they had over there. Oh, we're here St. Vincent, I'm sorry. But this is in Sydney, right? So is this different? Are you guys different? Yeah. Sorry, guys. Yeah, but what we did is we would read the papers and then we would think, is it really as simple as giving lower amounts of chemotherapy is actually going to be negative, going to create negative outcomes for patients? Is it that simple? Because I would imagine that it's a much more complicated formula that you have to actually establish when you are giving chemotherapy treatment. So we would contact an expert in chemotherapy, and we would ask them that question, and they will take us through, what you actually, how you do calculate dosage, and whether you combine it with radiotherapy and things like that. And for instance, with this one, we had Ian Haynes write for us, and he was saying that actually there's a lot of studies that show support for lower doses of chemotherapy if they're given concurrently with radiotherapy, and if there's less side effects and things like that. So we kind of try and the media does, the mainstream media does tend to oversimplify things, and with stories like that, like on the ABC, I remember the news was saying there was someone who knew one of the people who died, one of this guy's patients, and they were saying, oh, he underdosed him and then he died 3 weeks later. And it was like, well, it's likely he may have died from the cancer itself, not from the underdosing. So we kind of just try and take a really critical look at whether there's any questions that we have when we're reading something, and then we sort of then contact an expert and ask them whether our question is valid. And if it is, then we'll ask them to write on that.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So do you read?
I was actually going to say we can probably get a lot more out of the questions.
Yeah, don't worry about the workshop.
What I might do is, since the workshop is probably quite exciting, we might invite you back to our, no, this is me thinking of my strategy. We've got a colloquium at the, in October.
Yeah.
So the network has a good morning session, like a workshop session, so that might be a good idea for our members to have a small, I think we've got 2 hours before the meeting. Cool. We might just do a workshopping session with colloquium. How does that sound? Well, because I think
and people can sit in little groups rather than like this.
I think it's something that's quite interesting. And thanks. I'm the ideas girl.
I'm sorry? Oh, yes.
So,
Right there, thank you.
So, I think we're getting a lot of questions, more stuff. So,
Yeah, I agree.
might invite you back for some work later on.
Yeah, so explainers are a really good way to get to write for us. So again, even with chemotherapy, like what is chemotherapy? How does it work? That's something people don't really know about. So we've had articles like that. What is radiotherapy? What are measles and why do you need to get vaccinated? What is herd immunity? Hello? Thank you. Yes.
So when we have to write informed consent forms, we have to write it for grade 8 understanding. And I look at your thing and it's a very highly educated audience, probably.
Yes. Yeah. At a university. Yeah.
What level are you pitching at? Because some of those things that you were talking about there seem to be fairly,
People are educated, but they're educated in specific areas. sorry, yes. People are educated in specific areas. So not everyone's going to know how a molecule binds to an enzyme and creates a reaction in your body. So I guess we come at it from the position of not to assume prior knowledge. We really explain everything. And that's why people really go to our site, because they get, even if they do know the thing that they're reading about, they'll still get that reinforced. And there will, chances are there'll be a lot of other things they don't know. So we try and say to write as if you're writing for an intelligent 16-year-old. And that's how you, how you approach it.
Sometimes people do go about doing that. So the things that are published is what they initially might get tweaked, and then the final version has got exactly what you would like.
Yes.
Public, is there an opportunity to have a conversation to have the last glance?
Yeah, so I was saying that before. Yeah, right. Okay, so that's what I was saying. It sets us apart from other media. Is that no, that's all right. Is that we will always send the final draft back to you, and the system doesn't let us publish until you have hit approve. Yeah, and we do usually change a lot. So that's another thing that sometimes people think that it'll kind of come through very similar to how you wrote it originally. We've got a really set style. And so there is a lot of restructuring, there's a lot of questions, and a lot of the questions might seem quite silly to you guys because, when you do put in jargon or something, we kind of say, I don't understand that, can you explain it simpler? So that's kind of like maybe frustrating for some academics, but generally the public are really, appreciative of that. Because there's a lot that you do read, say, in The Age, and you think, oh, what does that actually even mean? But we make sure that that's always explained.
Is that done by email?
Yeah, so we've got, is there any way to open up the internet? Cool, thanks. Just so show you the system, which is pretty cool. No, it's really cool. Sorry? Oh, right. Sorry. I think I'll have to type in a verification code. People really want to hack our site so bad. That was a joke they jumped into. Okay, so every editor has a dashboard, and thinking this is a story I'm working on at the moment. And so what happens is, sorry, I don't know how to work this computer because we work with Apple, but this is kind of the back of the site, and when we commission an article, we send you a brief through the system, and the brief looks Sorry, I don't know how to use this very well. No, it's okay. So the brief looks like that's not the brief. Somebody else did that, not me. Anyway, so we tell you what we'd like you to write or what we discuss over the phone. Then it provides you with a link to go to the back of our site, and then you go to this bit here. And as you can see, it's like you write in there, and then we've got this history tab that shows you what's been done beforehand. So that was Mandy is the author, then I did the editing there, and then we'll sort of put notes in and say, can you please explain this, can you do that, blah, blah, and then she will then do that, and then you can preview the article and what it might look like once it's ready, and we usually put in a headline, and then we'll say request approval, and we will then say thanks for the article, are you happy with the way it looks now? Then we'll send this approval to them. They'll get an email saying your article, Sasha has requested that you approve the article, and then they'll have a look at it and push approve. So as you can see, here's a question. She's saying, if it's okay, I'd rather be lack than inadequate. And then obviously I will probably say, yeah, that's fine. That's how it works.
So it sounds like the approach is to sort of pitch an idea and then sort of work with you about what the article might look like rather than to write an article and say, this is my idea.
Absolutely, yes. Sorry if I didn't make that clear. I was just saying that I was saying once the pitch has been accepted, then this is how you write. But yes, the idea is to just discuss in brief what the article will cover, and then once you give it to us, then we'll edit it. But usually we don't really like full drafts of already written articles because they're usually not really to our style, and it takes us a while to unpack what they're trying to say or what the main point is. Yeah.
How long is a pitch? Is it just like a few dot points?
A pitch looks like so this is the home page, and if you scroll down on the right hand side, pitch an idea. So you push that, and then it, yes, I'm ready to submit my pitch, and then it sort of says, what's your story? Yeah, 50 is a lot. It would be good if you usually we know why you're pitching it because we read the news. So if it is a news item, you don't need to say news reports today show that blah blah. We'll know what they show. So you can just tell us what you want to say about it. So when we do get a pitch, it looks like this. Yeah. So it comes through like that. The ban of mobile phones in Australia's onshore asylum seeker detention centres has now been imposed by the Border Force Agency. Significance, they're saying why. Sorry, this is not really working for me. So this is a pitch we didn't accept. Why didn't we accept it? Mainly just because we've got too much on and we couldn't take it. It's not a bad pitch. It's really timely. People are talking about the ban of mobile phones. Probably what we would do here is let me create a support mental health. Yeah, it's actually a good pitch. So can't say much else about that.
If you can't use something immediately, can you hold it until you might use them?
Sorry, if we...
If you can't use something immediately, so you can use this one straight away, does that mean you might hold
Yeah,
it?
yeah. So a lot of times we'll say, you know, we're really swamped right now, but this is really interesting. Do you mind waiting for a month or so until I can work on it? Yeah. With this, obviously, it's in the news and you'd want it out as soon as possible, so we probably couldn't hold this kind of thing for too long. Yeah. Maybe somebody will accept this, because there's about 5 editors on the politics side, so who knows. Yeah. Any other questions?
I had a question about Republishing.
Yes.
Following what Jim was saying, I think you have a particular type of reader, I think. So I think people who read the conversation may be different from people who read their own stuff, for example. But, you know, as an author researcher, you might want to reach people who read their own stuff.
Yeah. The Herald Sun has republished our articles.
But my question was how proactive are you as an editor reaching out to other, like you sort of wait until people publish, or do you push the stories out to other media outlets to see if they're interested in publishing?
Yeah, so this is about republication and if we push for our stories to be republished. We've got a guy from the ABC who's actually in our office, and he sits in on the conference in the morning where we discuss what stories we're working on, and if he's interested in something where he thinks the ABC is interested, he actually directly, you know, contacts his colleagues. So that's the ABC. With other publications, we usually just leave it because they know us well enough now, but there are some stories. We have a community relations external relations manager, and so she works on that. So she got, for instance, a Guardian interested in republishing our articles. She had meetings with several Guardian editors, and now they look at what we do. So we've got a newsletter that a lot of media companies subscribe to, and they will see what our stories are, and usually if whatever our main story is in the newsletter, that one usually gets republished a lot. So that kind of just shows that, you know, other media are seeing this newsletter and they're like, oh, this is cool. So the Herald Sun, I just want to show you, we do a lot of stories on sex in the health section, and they unfortunately are the ones that are really, really well read. So these are the kinds of stories that the Herald Sun would republish.
I don't need to pick on them.
Yeah, no, that's fine. You should pick on them. Yeah, so let's just see how many. See, but the thing is, while, you know, it's a salacious topic and it's interesting and whatever, it is backed by evidence. We are getting an academic who is researching this to write about it. So it's not silly stuff. It's not some kind of, you know, sex therapist for the Herald Sun who's a columnist. So this one got 219,000 reads. Sorry?
Are you talking about the former athletes?
No. So as you can see, IFL Science was a big one there. SBS, Mamma Mia. Yeah. One of our both best published stories was on the clitoris and how we should bring it back into medical textbooks. So this is an author dashboard, which then shows you, every author can get into it and shows you the articles that you've published and how many. Yeah, as you can see, she's a very She's one of the popular authors. So this one had over nearly 2 million reads.
What's the difference between comments received and comments made?
Where does it say that? I think it's comments received and comments made.
On the previous, for the other articles and comments received, a lower number, which is here.
I think it's the same thing. It just says it differently in the different pages. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I don't want to misrepresent this and say that we mainly do sex. I mean, this is just to show you. You mentioned the Herald Sun, which is why I went to this area.
Might just start.
Yeah, sure.
I'd like to, might just get it.
Yeah. Can I sign out?
Yeah, I think you can sign out. Sign everyone out here. Just like to thank Sasha. It was really interesting, sort of gauging by all the questions. I think we could still be here for a while, but join us next door for something to eat and drink, everyone. You can keep asking questions on one-on-one, and if you don't mind, we might ask you back again for the workshop later on in the year. It'd be fantastic. So thank you, and thank you again, Alfie, and thanks for coming, and thanks to everyone for listening on the other end. Bye. You go take the one next door.